Yeah, so I think a lot of our participants are familiar with this format, but you have entered a Zoom webinar, and someone asked, is all of our audio shut off, hopefully? And yes, it is. There will come a time when you can ask questions of the panelists, and I'll be monitoring that later. But you don't need to worry that something you're saying to someone in the room there with you is going to show up on the webinar. And we now have almost 70, so you want to go ahead and get going?
Sure.
Let's do it.
So, good afternoon, everybody. I'm Shana Peschek, the Executive Director of the Machinists Institute. And I know at many of our past council meetings, we've discussed kind of the need and the interest in having some mental health awareness and suicide awareness trainings. And we have been working on putting that together with joint programs, and that is still in the process. And we've made some good steps for becoming a vendor, and then the virus hit. So that's been put on hold until we can bring people back. So in the meantime, we thought, what could we do to kind of address this, especially because we know that the reactions to the virus are impacting ourselves, our members, our communities, our families, and this is a very stressful time. So it seemed like a very critical time to step in and offer some resources for you. I am really honored to be able to introduce Cal Beyer. When I was working in the construction industry, I attended a session on suicide awareness and mental health for that industry, and was really touched in my heart by his intense passion for this subject and making a difference. And he has done work across the country on this and has just been a very powerful leader in our state in bringing this topic to an industry that has some challenges, and there's a lot of stigma just in normal circumstances around this topic. And so then to bring it into the construction industry, he's done an amazing job of really elevating it, making it a safety issue, and getting a lot of employers and apprenticeship programs to really take this seriously and start making change. I do want to share that I lost my grandfather to suicide, and I say that because I want to help change the stigma. And I think being able to talk to it, I know lots of people have been touched in one way or another by suicide. And so if we can affect that stigma around it and be able to have it be a topic that can be discussed and talked about and hopefully prevent any more from happening, then that's really important to me. So Cal has a very robust presentation today. It's a tip of the iceberg, but he's got a lot of great resources. I hope you will all find this very helpful and informative. So Cal, take it away.
Shana, thank you very much for this opportunity to meet your new colleagues. And when we worked together in the construction space, you were an early adopter. So I remember working with you at that very first day and how much excitement I had when 3 hours later you called and said, I want to help you secure a grant. And we had that grant finally come to fruition in the second opportunity. And I just saw the video that we made last October, and that will be released in the construction industry. So I can't thank you enough for this opportunity. When you came over to work with District 751 in your new role, you asked, could I share resources with you that would pertain to the manufacturing space as well? I have worked in the manufacturing and the construction industry full-time since 1996, but my first workplace experience with suicide was as a high schooler. I worked in an emergency room and I worked in an ICU, and I ultimately worked on an organ transplant unit. And it probably was my own insecurities and my own anxiety that kept me from becoming a doctor. I've always had the caregiving spirit to make a difference in the workplace. And so like Shana shared her experience losing a grandparent, I want people to know that it's okay to not be okay. And so this topic, everyone has a role to play in suicide prevention, is to give you a framework for better understanding how to talk to people in your family, in your community, your neighbors, your friends, and especially your coworkers. So a little bit about myself. In 2014, I moved my family to Washington, and it was to bake mental health and suicide prevention into safety, health, and wellness. I worked for a signatory contractor. We were a manufacturing and construction company called Lakeside Industries in Issaquah, Washington, operations from the Canadian border down to Portland. We were signatory to 3 unions. It was the operating engineers, the laborers, and the Teamsters. And to start this process, we started talking to our labor unions. And so principally it was me initially asking questions about behavioral health. And what a journey this has been. This became viral in our industry, and it really went to the next level. So much so that despite making a commitment that I would stay at Lakeside until I retired, the president of the company and his wife released me from that commitment and said, "Your calling trumps your commitment. We don't want you to leave, but we want you to go help other people." My first day in my new job was March 16th, the first day they went to work at home. CSDZ is a 100-year-old company that's in the insurance space, and they're specialized in construction. Our parent company does more work with manufacturing. I think I'm uniquely qualified, though, to address the same types of issues in the trades that apply for manufacturing as we experience in construction. And so I've packed enough information for people to understand what are the risk factors and why is this such a high-risk topic. So my title is Vice President of Workforce Risk and Worker Wellbeing. I'm researching and analyzing and addressing those broader workplace issues that affect workforces and also worker well-being at the individual level to help employees in need seek resources. So this topic is a loaded topic. It's very emotional. I appreciate Shana breaking the ice, sharing the story she shared with me about her grandfather. Every one of us comes to this with a different mindset and a different place. Some of you may have experienced that loss. Some families, you may never have talked about it. I've had over 10 people since I started this process over 10 years ago share that they had losses 30 years ago. And this was the first time they talked about it. And so what I like to do is have everyone just take a moment of silence to honor those folks that we've lost to suicide, addiction, or other mental health conditions. And just please join me in your way of remembering those in a moment of silence. Thank you. COVID-19 has caused a lot of stress, uncertainty, the ripple effect of uncertainty, stress, and worry. And what I did when this issue became such a reality is I reached out to Shana and said, I know you're going to be working on the mental health first aid program. If I can help you in the interim, let me know. I have been reaching out to labor unions across the country, offering to do webinars like this to prepare them to talk to their members. So in the past several weeks, it's been the operating engineers, the carpenters, the laborers, and several other labor unions. I was grateful when Shana gave me this opportunity to share information with you. Suicide is a pressing national health concern. I don't use the word epidemic because that triggers negative thoughts, but it really is a health concern. Since 1999, over 30% increase in suicide. In 2018, there were 48,000 suicides in the United States. And in Canada, another 11,000. So this is a real pressing issue. What I want you to know is the trades are also high-risk industries. And that we have factors that are industry, their company, their job, and its lifestyle issues. But the most important thing we'll talk about today is suicide can be preventable if we can break the stigma. So to Shana's point, perfect introduction, we want to break stigma. This is about a message of hope, help, and recovery. So normally people say to me, wow, we don't even talk about this in my family. How come we're going to be talking about this at the workplace? Because so many Americans are of working age. And there's so many statistics and factors that make this necessary to talk about in the workplace. Between 20 and 25% of adults will experience a diagnosable mental condition in their lifetime. And in any given year, 20 to 25% will experience that as well. These can be recurring if we don't get help. In the workplace, the most common that we see are substance use disorders, anxiety, and depression. So those are our realities. The sad news is, because of stigma, only 20% of people with a mental illness will seek help. The good news is, there can be up to an 80% increase if people get help. When we break stigma, people feel more comfortable to seek help and obtain help. Normally in the US population, it can take 8 to 10 years for a person to get a proper diagnosis and treatment for a mental health condition. My goal by bringing this to the workplace is to reduce the amount of time it takes to get people the help they need. So there are many statistics. That 200 million lost workdays is probably just scratching the surface. But it's absenteeism and presenteeism when people are at work but not fully engaged. They can't focus, they can't concentrate, they're struggling with distraction, they're having disruptions. Those can lead to safety and quality incidents. So as a safety and risk management professional, that's what got me into this space of workplace mental health. The first suicide prevention project I did was back in the early 90s. I was working with cities and counties across the country before I moved to construction and manufacturing full time. And I was assessing why people were attempting suicide in jails. And I started doing behavioral risk assessments in jails. And I found every workplace had this hidden problem, and I discovered stigma. Stigma is that fear of the unknown. It's when we look down on someone or something because it has a characteristic we don't understand. And when we talk about mental health in the workplace, we break that stigma. People feel free to talk among themselves and each other, and they actually get help. And I'll give you examples throughout this today. The reason I talk about this as a safety and risk professional, it's a matter of life and death. We don't let workers work at heights without fall protection. We don't let them work in confined spaces without atmospheric monitors and respiratory protection. Why would we allow them to work when they're contemplating suicide or self-harm? So since it's a matter of life and death, I want to share just a couple of statistics. I don't like to dwell on the statistics because those are meaningless numbers. They don't reflect the pain and suffering that families experience. But 133 each day. And the sad news, that's underreported. We know that. But one death by suicide approximately every 11 minutes. 10th leading cause of death for all ages in our country. In Canada, it's 9th. But the shocking part is second leading cause of death for men. And then the sad part, and why we have to address this in the workplace to talk to families, look at the second leading cause of death for these young ages. So children's, nephews, nieces, cousins. Second leading cause of death, 10 to 14, 15 to 19, and 20 to 24. If we don't do something disruptive to stop that trend, our increase in suicide will continue. I'm happy to tell you that there are many people researching the youth suicidality and trying to put prevention strategies in place. And yes, to answer a question I'm always asked, is the internet and cyber one of the reasons why this occurs? Absolutely. Going back to men, 78% of suicides are of men. And I want to share that number, 51% with firearms, is a national number. In Washington, that's been closer to 78%. So there are always regional differences and variations. This isn't about gun control, it's about gun safety. And the same with prescription medications and over-the-counter medications. This is about reducing access to lethal means. So because this is such a life-saving topic, I'd like to engage every one of you. Please bring out your cell phones, load these two numbers into your phone, and just create a new contact card. I'm going to encourage you to share this with your family and loved ones and coworkers so everyone has the opportunity to help someone else. Crisis Text Line is a text service. The number is 741-741. You can text to that number, help, home, connect, and they will respond. When you send a text to that number, you get an automated response. And it says, we've received your text, please hold. We're assigning you to a counselor. They're available 24/7. They're confidential, it's free, and the volunteers receive 30 hours of training in mental and behavioral health before they're allowed to man the phone calls. Crisis Text Line is a very powerful service, and I'd encourage you to use it. The second one is the National Suicide Prevention Lifeline. This is a very powerful resource. They have ample information. They're connected to over 250 other call centers on an overflow basis. That reduces the amount of time anybody needs to wait. They are free, confidential, 24/7. And what's powerful about this group is they also have the Veterans Crisis Line and they have a Spanish line. So that number is 800-273-8255. For those of you like Spencer who are smart, you can do the 273 talk. I do better with the numbers, Shana. You've seen me. So 800-273-8255. Even if someone says they're not thinking of killing themselves, why would you encourage them to call the Suicide Prevention Lifeline? Because they have resources, they have relationships, they can connect you to clinics faster than if you try to find those clinics on your own. So I am a huge believer in sharing those numbers with everyone. And I always encourage people to load those numbers into their phones. So thank you. I hope that those numbers are very useful for you. So we're going to push out a poll. I'm going to stop sharing in just a moment. Spencer, do you have these questions typed on the screen, or do you want me to read them?
I just have the first one about ever having addressed it, and I was going to do the other one later, yeah.
So if I stop sharing, they'll be able to see the question, or do you want me to read the question and then?
Go ahead and read the question.
Okay. So we really encourage you to please respond to the following poll question. Have you ever addressed the topics of mental well-being, addiction recovery, or suicide prevention as a safety, health, and wellness topic with the union members? And type 1 for yes, 2 for no. And I'm going to stop sharing. And once you've answered the poll, if you said yes, would you please send a few words about how you addressed those topics in your safety with your members?
Just 1 second here.
Thank you, Spencer.
So that should have worked, and we'll see if this works here. Yep, people are starting to vote now.
Good. Shana, we can't vote. I just saw that note.
It's going to be a close call. It's running 51-49, just like every election.
Wow. Our vote would have mattered, Shana.
20, let's see, it's we're 30 seconds into the poll. We have 46 of 81. So
Great.
We're getting a good turnout here.
And if you said yes, if you would just type a few words So Spencer or Shana can read those so we know some of the ways you've addressed these topics with your members.
In the chat environment.
Yeah. Thank you, Spencer.
So I'm going to let it roll for another few seconds here, and then I'm going to call it. So I'm going to give you another 10 seconds here. And I think we have a winner.
Good.
Which is no by a margin. It's 52 to 48%.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Spencer, do you mind if I go back to screen share?
I hope you will.
Okay, thank you. And so I'm going to close this poll. This is a big reason why we offer these types of webinars as an introduction to give you some ideas, some tools, and even resources so you can address those with your members. Shana or Spencer, did you get any comments in the chat about how people have addressed this with their members?
Yes, we did get a few responses. One of them kind of speaks to maybe some of the signs where the mechanic was suffering and had an attendance issues. Another person said they called the suicide prevention line and had a 3-way call with the person, and I think that's a really important distinction, to stay on the line with them. Someone else has discussed the issue through personal relationships and gotten the person into therapy, talking about it in meetings to let people know that you're, concerned. On the VPP safety committee, and they pushed it out through monthly printed safety flyers.
Great. Those are some really good examples. Last week we did the Carpenters, or I did the Carpenters, and 2 of their locals sent 45-minute videos or 45-second videos that they sent out to all their members. So think about creative ways when you see some of the tools on how you can reach your members during these really trying times. And think about their families as well, going through all the stress of kids at home, spouses at home, significant others, all people feeling stress.
Here's a nice one. Got a member to enroll into alcohol treatment before he went into self-destruction mode. He has now graduated the class and is doing really well today.
Wow. That's why we do this topic. It can change someone's life. It can save someone's life. So I'm really glad you read that one, Spencer. Thank you. So people frequently ask me, how did you come to a new company and convince them to bake this into safety, health, and wellness? I used this book called Safety 24/7. Every new hire at Lakeside got a copy of this book. And it was part of our culture. We were seasonal, and so we didn't see all employees year round. There were some that we didn't see for 60 or 90 days in the winter. And this book talked about safety at home, work, and play. It was a way to reach them at their home, with their families, with their children, modeling proper safety. It talked about personal responsibility. And what I mostly loved about the book was that shared accountability among crew members. So Safety 24/7, most companies, including the major ones you work for, would say they have a Safety 24/7 culture. They focus on getting everyone home safe at the end of their shift. A majority of construction companies would say that. But if we're truly a Safety 24/7 company, that's not enough. So we focus on getting everyone home safe at the end of the shift, but for employees at risk, we need to focus on getting them back to work safe from home. That was the distinction people bought in when they realized people with underlying mental health conditions, people with alcohol dependence or drug issues, they were suffering in silence, and it was the stigma that kept them from getting help. And so by making this a safety, health, and wellness topic, we were able to help people find paths to success, much like the examples you shared. So one really important thing I'd like to teach you today is the importance of language. The media frequently portrays suicide as an evil, as a bad decision made by weak people. And nothing could really be further from the truth. We teach safe suicide language and safe suicide reporting to the media. The most important thing we can do is not blame the victim. Suicide isn't about death, it's about stopping pain of loneliness, isolation, embarrassment, shame for that condition, for the separation that maybe it's caused, the stress in their life. And when we say someone committed suicide, we're blaming the victim. We need to treat mental health and emotional health like we do physical health. And we don't say someone committed cancer or committed brain tumor or committed diabetes or committed broken leg. They suffered it, they experienced, they have a diagnosis of. And so what's really important is understanding language matters. Sometimes when someone has experienced a loss, it's a matter of helping them in their grief to not blame. I'm sorry your child died by suicide. You're not blaming. And what's really powerful here is not only is it about stopping the pain, survivors of suicide attempts frequently report regrets. And the vast majority are grateful to be alive. And a very small percentage actually go on and attempt again and die by suicide. And so to people who talk about people being weak or selfish, I always like to share a really powerful story. We're not going to be able to do the video today, but I'm going to send Shana and Spencer my slides so you can have this YouTube link, or go to YouTube, look at Kevin Hines, the Kevin Hines story. He is almost 40. At age 19, he jumped and survived a jump off the Golden Gate Bridge. And he is a powerful warrior in suicide prevention. He suffers from bipolar and depression, and he is the epitome of strength, and he is the epitome of wellness and well-being. He has exercise regimens, he has programs that people follow, and his goal is about having people realize it's okay to not be okay. You see that book, Cracked But Not Broken. What a great title. Most of us are cracked, but not broken. And he's saying, it's okay. I'm cracked. Love me, warts and all. He also has this full-length feature film called The Ripple Effect. And I've probably never been more honored than when Kevin said, Cal, I love the ripple you're creating in the construction industry. So a powerful testimonial. It's not uncommon for me to share this with folks like you. You share it with your families to say, wow, we talked about suicide prevention today. I was asked to share this with someone, and for a family member who's struggling to decide to get help. That's the power that Kevin Hines has over this illness. And that's the power Kevin has for people to talk about recovery. So to me, he's a beacon of hope. He is a light of help, and he's a path toward recovery. He helps people help themselves. So I'd like to talk real quickly about some of the risk factors in the trades. This is at the Olympia at the Washington State Capitol, March 19th of 2019, and it was Suicide Prevention Education Day. 1,254 Washingtonians died by suicide in 2018. 255 were veterans, and you'll see yellow ribbons on some of those mock tombstones. I have a better picture in a few minutes that show black packs, 87 for youths under 19. And then construction initially was reported as the third highest. And it turned out we had not 77, but 125. So I'll share a little bit more information. I have some high-level data about machinists that I'll share in just a few minutes. So I want to let you know, in construction, more people die by suicide than from all occupational types of injuries. OSHA has the focus 4. It should be the focus 5, and this should be really the focus 1. And yet it's rarely something that we talk about. Construction has the second highest rate, and the largest number of suicides. Per 100,000, it's 45.3. That's hard to visualize, but it's 5,500 suicides per year versus about 1,200 or fewer occupational deaths. So construction is 3 times the national average. One good news for you in manufacturing and machinists, machine work, is oil and gas is number 1. You're not number 1. And so I want to share now some information by trade. So construction was 43.5. Some of our trades were very high. Iron workers, 79. The brick and block masons, 67. Roofers, 65. I built in machinists, because Shana and I said the trades are very similar. That number of 64 is high.
Can I interrupt for a second, Cal?
Absolutely.
In the comment box, it says that poll results are still blocking the screen.
Did I solve that problem just now when I closed that window?
All right.
Thank you, Spencer. Sorry, folks.
I mean, I hope I did. I don't know.
It's closed on my end.
I think it's okay.
Okay. And so I just wanted people to think for a moment, if you think this isn't an issue in your industry or in your local or district, as you call it, or in your family of workers, think again. It's real, and we can't ignore it or bury our heads in the sand. So I want to share really quickly, there's very incomplete data, much like we had in construction. I got this data from the Secretary of Health and the Washington Department of Health. And that data initially was 77. 6 months later, they said, we have additional data. We were able to do additional research. That number should have been 125. In March, they told me that information, Shana, that you'd asked me to help you find last October, November, when you came to 751, they only had data of 14 machinist suicides and 4 aerospace machinists. But then see my note at the bottom of this slide. The data for the machinists was marked not likely having all the proper occupation codes. So I think we should look at that data very skeptically and just continue to think that that 62 number per 100,000 is real. And it shows you this is a really sensitive topic. These are lives. So we have a poll that Spencer is going to push out. I'm going to read it, and then I'm going to stop sharing, and then he'll ask you for the poll. Does this data surprise you, or is this something you already knew? You have 3 options. 1, not surprised, you were aware of it. 2, surprised, but had no idea it was such a big issue in our industry. 3, knew about the industry issue, did not know about the trade specific rates. So this will be a pretty quick poll.
Go ahead and use the chat format to enter 1, 2, or 3. 1 again if you are not surprised, 2 if you were surprised, and 3 if you knew about it generally but did not know the trade specific rates. And we'll have to track those later because
Good.
the poll feature is down.
That's okay. Thank you, Spencer. Seeing any trend or too early to say?
CNN is not ready to predict a winner.
I bet you're fun on election night.
Travis asked if you could restate the options. Or you could
go ahead and just put it back up on the screen, Cal. Just go ahead and put your PowerPoint right back up there. And
so 1, not surprised. You knew about it since 2016. 2, surprised, but did not know it was such a big issue in our industry. And 3, knew about it as an industry issue, but not trade specific. And this was just to get some insights so Shana and John and others can think about how to message.
Thank you.
And Spencer, if you want me to continue, then
Keep on rolling. Yep. Yep.
when you're
Keep on
ready
rolling.
to reveal, okay, that sounds great. So that was about getting some insights. Now we would like you to use the chat function and share your thoughts about some of the biggest risk factors that contribute to suicide in the trades. And so Shana, Spencer, I'll help you if you want help later. We could compile this, share that with the folks who are attending. But this is just really important to think about. What are some of those risk factors? What are some of the things that you see? And as they come in, Shana and Spencer, feel free to read those off.
You go ahead, Shana. I'm counting poll results.
Okay.
Good, thank you too.
Divorce, demographics, which include substance abuse, poverty, social environment, trends in regard to local culture, a feeling of worthlessness,
Wow.
overworked, mandatory overtime, harassment in the workplace, trouble with loss of so many human lives, layoffs, job performance and peer pressure, money, substance abuse.
Wow.
Several of these that are domestic violence, divorce.
Thank you, everyone. That is a great list. That is powerful to think about. And the fact that you're aware of those things is going to help you when we teach you some of the techniques we're going to move to pretty quickly here. So Shana, thank you for that. I would like to just share quickly a summary of what I find as the most commonly cited in research from clinicians and from practitioners, the people that I work with and partner with on suicide prevention in the workplace. I put them into these three main buckets, but it's kind of four buckets. Things that are industry culture, company factors, job stressors, and then individual choices or lifestyle issues. The number one issue in industries and the trades has been that tough guy, tough gal, that stoic culture where we bottle up our feelings and we don't talk about it. And that's common in every male-dominated industry. So even though you have more diversity in your trade than in many construction trades, it's still considered male-dominated. And so that tough guy, tough gal culture is big. Secondly, folks like Shana and your peers have been trying to build the image of the trades through your programs on empowerment and diversity and inclusion and showcasing the workforce development and the great jobs. But that undesirable image makes people sometimes feel like that worthlessness. It reinforces poor self-esteem. The cyclicality of industries, like what's happening with some of your big partners in industry, shows the stress that that can cause. Same with construction when there's a downturn. Both industries have a tolerant culture of alcohol and substance use. I put a little asterisk, the two little asterisks, those are construction specific. I didn't have the data specific to manufacturing readily available when I put these slides together, but you're not far behind construction. Construction is the second heaviest for binge drinking. That's heavy drinking, more than 5 to 7 drinks in a single setting. 16% of the workers. I'm remembering your number closer to 12 or 13%. That's still a large number, 1 in 6, roughly. And drug use generally in the trades expanded by 13% between 2015 and 2018. Some of the other pressures that are industry culture, it's accelerated schedules. You're going to have that as people come back to work and you've been back to work and now you can't work fast enough, mandatory overtime. Those harsh conditions, more of your work is probably indoors, but still hard labor that's tough on the body. In some regards, manufacturing has one advantage over construction. most people don't have the same amount of family separation that we have in construction, where people will travel long periods. More of your folks will be at one manufacturing facility or a nearby manufacturing facility for a longer period. And then the comment about layoffs and furloughs, those are really stressful issues that routinely occur in manufacturing work as well. The company factors, one thing that is different between like first responders, they go to command officer school. We take our best production workers, or we take our most senior person and we make them a supervisor, but we haven't taught them new school supervision. So we have that perpetuation of old school. The Washington State does have the paid time off, which is available to hourly workers. In many states, that's not the case. Washington has been a leader in that regard. But I think some of those things are really important. The one that people talk to me a lot about in both manufacturing and construction is that humiliation of a bad job. They tell me that the pressure is there and there's a daily scorecard: schedule, budget, productivity, quality, safety. And they tell me everyone knows what's a good job, what's a bad job. And if you're running that job, the pressure is magnified. And then if you look at the worker lifestyle or choices sometimes that are made, a lot of us in these trades like to work with our hands. We have really high expectations for finishing tasks. We like to complete things on time. We like to have it be flawless. And we put a lot of pressure of perfectionism. And then all the things that you guys talked about with financial pressures. And I think that there are some of those things that are just unavoidable. The substance use spills over to a personal choice. In the trades, you'll have high incidence of smoking and obesity, substance use. A lot of it is from just being beaten down. And so I wanted you to know the opioid issue was huge in the trades. That chronic pain of those soft tissue injuries led to the highest incidence of prescription medication. So sometimes when we talk about the substance use, it's not illegal or illicit drugs, it's legal drugs and even prescription drugs prescribed by a doctor to make us feel well, and it turns addictive, and it starts sometimes innocently, just trying to take the edge off, just trying to be able to go to work, because if we're not at work, we're not getting paid. And so that's, in a matrix, the major risk factors, and it shows in different ways as stress and distress. And so I've listed for you physical signs, some psychosocial signs called psychological signs, and then behavioral signs. When you go through the program from the mental health first aid instructor, you'll spend hours talking about these types of signs and clues, and then strategies. I'm trying to break the stigma today. So I told Shana, I'll move fast, but we're going to cover a lot to have you feel like I can talk about this. So substance use, it's important to just talk about. If 20% of the population seeks help for mental conditions, the bad news is only 10% with a substance use. So my hat's off to the person who helped a member get help by enrolling in an AA program, because it's really hard to get people to make that choice alone. And so very, very important. Mental health conditions and substance use frequently occur together. They're called comorbidities. They exist together, and they can lead to bad health outcomes and even death. So 40% of people with substance use disorders also have a diagnosable mental health condition, and less than half get help for either. So that causes that treatment gap, and we have to find ways to talk about it. One of the most powerful things in the union collective bargaining agreement is a last chance agreement that I frequently see. And it gives someone the opportunity to get help without losing their job permanently. I'm seeing non-union companies adopt that from collective bargaining agreements. That's how well it works. And so I'm frequently telling people this is one thing I really appreciate about the union collective bargaining agreement. I think you have the opportunity to provide as a family, the brotherhood, the sisterhood, to take care of people as well. And we'll talk more about that. So I'm just going to cover this quickly. We're not going to spend a lot of time. In 2017, there were 72,000 drug overdoses. In 15, it was 50,000. 16, it was 62,000. And then it was 72,000. The good news, it started to get better. There have been more people clamping down on that initial prescription, and a lot of the fraud that was occurring has been cut out. But this does affect 7 in 10 workplaces. The operating engineers out in Connecticut recently helped organize a statewide stand down on opioids. It was powerful. So I can share information with Shana. That would make a really good toolbox talk. The thing I wanted to share with you is Shana has a toolbox talk I wrote, and it was called The Risk of Relapse for Drug and Alcohol Use During COVID-19. So many recovery meetings, AA and others, needed to move to virtual format, and very many people were left kind of out hanging. They didn't have someone to tell them that there's an app or there's meetings or here's how you dial in or here's how you use Zoom. Some people might not have had access to Zoom or a computer. And so these are just really, really important topics. And so that's what I'm talking about right now. Shana shared with me a couple resources I put together: our mental well-being and suicide prevention resources for employers, which would be you as District 751, but also for employees and families. And so I know several national labor unions that shared that risk of relapse toolbox talk to get that out to all the locals and even with their signatory contractors. And the same with that employee and family resource guide. So feel free to make copies and share that. That could be a good help for you as you learn these new skills of talking to people about mental health and well-being.
And we are putting those all on the website. Connie has graciously put some of those up already, I believe on the information page, but we can let everybody know where to find those resources.
And Cal, you're definitely opening people's eyes on that poll result. We had the majority of folks who were surprised by the data or had some knowledge about the industry issue, but did not know the trade-specific issues, and that was true by a margin of about 2 to 1.
2 to 1. Yeah. Now here's the bad news. I've been so busy doing this in construction, we've neglected some other industries, right, Shana? Mm-hmm. Which is why you told me I was one of the first calls you made when you came to the aerospace machinists. This is how we know this is working. In 2014, I left the insurance industry I was working in, came to work for a contractor to show people how it was done. This is a publication that's a business publication, and it was from May of 2016. What construction workers could teach other industries about mental health awareness. I wish I could universally substitute what trade workers, but the fact is, I worked for a construction company. I was driving an initiative for construction industry. Here's what I would tell you. There are some manufacturing publications, some manufacturing companies that want to do more. Boeing was a big sponsor of that Suicide Prevention Education Day. They were the main sponsor. They outraised all the other sponsors combined, if I remember correctly. And so that's the good news. You work for a company that believes in mental health and well-being. You'll just have to agree with me on that one. There's a lot of people in that organization that do care. I know they're under pressure as well. Secondly, you've got Shana. She's going to be a tireless advocate. She cares so darn much about people. I'm excited. Can't wait to hear more about that mental health first aid. I wasn't available. I told Shana, I'm going to help you find somebody. I recommended the guy that I feel is the best trainer that I've seen on this particular topic. And I'm thrilled that he's going to be the person that you guys partner with in that joint training. Third, I'm going to try to share with Shana, maybe some manufacturing publications would have the same interest in writing articles like we did in construction. So what I'm telling you is, I know this works because these are the examples of how it's worked. People are able to get help. So I'd like to share quickly another tool in the toolbox. This is called Man Therapy. It was rolled out in Colorado. The health department partnered with a friend of mine, Dr. Sally Spencer Thomas, and an ad agency called Cactus. And they said, let's use humor to break the stigma. So if you go to YouTube, you can find each of these videos, and you're going to see a really corny, goofy character named Dr. Rich Mahogany. He's not a real therapist. They put a disclaimer, he's not a real therapist, but he has some really funny stuff, and it reaches people because it uses humor to break the stigma, as I said. So I gave you an overview video. I gave you one where he talks in less than a minute about anger, sadness, stress, and substance use. And the most hysterical, I wish we could do video on Zoom, is this breathing exercise. And Shana, you might recall that from the Suicide Prevention Summit we did in October of 2017.
Yeah.
Recently, on a different webinar platform, I had a group that asked me to play that 4 times. And I'm like, okay, it's only 30 seconds, but you'll enjoy that when you get these slides. Please look that one up. And then I want to share, they have an area on their website called the 20-point head inspection checklist. The reason we talk about this in the workplace is coworkers and peers have really good success when they demonstrate that concern and that care. And when it's the union, it is that brotherhood, sisterhood. And that 20-point head inspection checklist, it shows you 3 sample results a person who does it online is going to get. And so just for an example, the low risk will say, well, you're doing great, but like anything, it's something that we want to work on. The high risk one says, I'm not a real doctor. And if a not real doctor is concerned about you, I think you need to get consultation with a real doctor. It just is done really professionally, respectfully, and it has people feel comfortable talking about really tough topics that we've normally not talked about. So I want you to know, like loading in those numbers, like sharing Kevin Hines, and now Man Therapy. Those are 3 new tools in the toolbox. The next area I want to just highlight is an employee assistance program. This is really one of the most underutilized employee benefits. In your behavioral health plan, do you have an EAP? And this is something that shocks me, how little use they get. Many employee assistance programs are bolted on to the benefits, and you'll have really low utilization. What I would tell you is the large employers are the ones that have the higher utilization. And even then, it averages around 5 to 6%. In construction, it's not been uncommon for me to find companies that have had less than 1%. But now the average is about 1 to 2% before someone says, we got to find a better way to promote this. So remember when I told you the first thing I did after I got my company president to buy in, I got our senior leaders like me to buy in, and then I went to my biggest labor union. So in that case, it was the operating engineers 302. And I asked them questions about their suicide prevention program. Do you have a behavioral health? Can someone get recovery services for an addiction? Does that include families? And they would tell you, wow, you kicked our butts because we didn't know all the answers to those questions. And it's okay. Shana knows. Those guys are now friends. I'm meeting with them on Friday to do a follow-up with their folks up in Alaska. We were just vulnerable with each other. And I said, I want to let you know so you're not surprised if your members call and say, Lakeside just hired a different safety person and he's talking about mental health in the workplace. That's what I felt a partner should do. And they were the first, and I'm always grateful for what they've done, because they opened the door for me to be able to help thousands and now tens of thousands of people. And so there is this article. I gave you the link, 9 questions to better understand EAP. And really that employee assistance program has 2 main benefits: reducing the distractions that employee feels from personal reasons, and to promote a better life-work balance. It's a great resource for dependents as well, but it's important to know who's covered in an EAP. So what I'd like to do is just ask you to do what you did previously. Use the chat function, respond to whichever one of these you feel comfortable sharing. Do you know if District 751 has an employee assistance program as part of the behavioral health? Do you know who's eligible? Is it spouse, domestic partner, significant other? Is it in-laws? Is it children? Is it anybody who's residing in that home? Every EAP has different rules. Third, do you know what benefits exist? Do you know the frequency of those benefits? Do you know if there's a copay or is it all free? And then lastly, do you share the number of the EAP with your members? If you say yes, let us know how you share it. Is it in a newsletter? Is it on a poster? Is it in some type of special communication? And lastly, if anyone knows your utilization rate, it would just be nice to know. You don't have to share it, but do you know it? Yes or no? I've yet to have somebody on one of these webinars, 14 in the last 3.5 weeks, that's known their utilization rate. I've only come across 2 people, Shana, in over 150 people I've asked, what's your utilization rate? So I almost offered up a gift card, but the odds of anyone having that would be really low right now, unless that's your job for 751. So Spencer, if you don't mind, I'll keep going. Maybe you could just take a few notes. Shana, you could take a few notes. Shana, would you look at 1 and 2? And then Spencer, would you mind looking at 3, 4, and 5? If people answer those questions, and I'll check in with you guys in just a minute if that's okay.
Okay.
Kind of bossy, aren't I?
Spencer's muted. I don't think.
Yeah, that's fine. You keep on rolling. We've
Okay.
got you covered. We got your back.
Perfect. Thanks, you guys. Sorry to be so bossy.
All right.
Again, I started this in the construction industry. I'm sorry I didn't do it in the manufacturing industry. At one point, I was running the manufacturing practice for a large insurance company, and I did a lot of work in the manufacturing space. I was a keynote speaker for Rockwell Automation Safety Automation Forum. I felt like there was more need in construction, so I returned to construction. And the reality is, every trade, this is a need. I think some of these resources would be useful for you if you want to learn more. So they're available free. It's www.preventconstructionsuicide.com. I'm just going to highlight really quickly some of the tools that are available. There are some articles and white papers. 2 of them go back to 2016. One was called 10 Questions Leaders Must Ask. And the second, 10 Action Steps Companies Can Take to Save Lives. That would be a really good place for a labor union to look. Do we understand what we're getting ourselves into? And Shana, you probably got those years ago.
Mhm.
There are posters, I'll show you in a minute, English and Spanish. They're definitely construction, but it shows you with a little bit of creativity, finding an ad agency, you could make posters that would be really relevant for your workforce. We have a pledge form for construction that allows owners, contractors, subcontractors, suppliers, insurance company, lawyers, other business partners. I think I'm missing one category, to take a pledge and become a member free. And it's just showing support in our industry. The other thing I wanted to make you aware of, there is discounted training free till May 29th. It's from Living Works, is a company out of Australia. They partnered in Australia with a group called Mates in Construction, which was started by a labor union. And that is a 60 to 90 minute module. And it would be a good place if you wanted additional information. And then the last item I want to highlight, on that website, you'll find an anonymous screening tool. You'll also find anonymous screening tools at Mental Health America. And I don't remember that URL, but if you type Mental Health America screening, it brings you to a whole page that has probably 20 different types of screening questionnaires that you can take. And so I felt, even though this was construction, those would be really relevant resources for me to share with you. Now I want to share the posters. So the first poster we used was mental health can't be fixed with duct tape. And that was powerful. This one, face suicide warning signs before it's too late. And that exists in Spanish. And so the language would be the same, but the photo could be changed. And you can download free the artwork. Someone in your professional staff has to have the artistry to be able to do that. Just because I can't do it doesn't mean you guys can't. And so superimpose a machinist. You got some great photos on your website. You got some great history. I think it would be a powerful way to reach your people. This is the second one I used at Lakeside. The first one I used was the duct tape. And about 3 months later, I used this one. I wanted to get people's attention, and then I wanted to lead with a positive. And so peer to peer, we're all in this together. And that one exists in Spanish. We have 2 more that I'm showing you that aren't available in Spanish. Shana, you'll remember the Women Build Nations event. It was hosted in Seattle. You see the little logo there. They had me come and do 3 sessions. I felt like I was part of the sisterhood. I learned more about construction in those 3 days than I think I'd learned in my prior 25 years. It was powerful. It was game-changing for me. People told me I was bold. It's made me bolder to really just hit the hearts, to let people know you can talk about this. This picture just rivets me. I look in this person's eyes and I get the image of someone that is stressed and struggling, going through a lot of pain, and really just probably feels alone. And so think about a person reflecting your workforce, how powerful that message would be, that it's okay to not be okay. And the reason we do it is everyone has a role to play in suicide prevention. This one's a little less edgy. And so some people have preferred that. It's just a person looking out, probably a different look than the other one. So I'm throwing a lot at you, and it's really what Shana and I said, asking for 90 minutes at the end of a day. Many of you have probably worked. Some of you might be going into work. We appreciate what you've given us, and I hope that I'm hitting the mark for you, that you feel more knowledgeable, more capable of talking about these topics at work. For sure, hopefully in your home, at your family. And it's easier sometimes to practice at home. The next tool I want to share is a model called LEARN, L-E-A-R-N, and it's Learn Saves Lives. This was developed by the University of Washington. They have a nonprofit called Forefront Suicide Prevention. And this Dr. Jen Stuber has been partnering with me since I pretty much got to Washington. And we have a similar group in Oregon. We have 2 stakeholder groups. Shana, you were participating with the Washington group. But in Oregon, we have 70 people that are getting together, 45 regularly. And we're teaching people these techniques to take to job sites. So one way I did this was these things I called pocket packets. This doesn't show the envelope, But inside this small envelope that fit in a safety vest or back pocket of jeans were 2 hard hat stickers and 3 wallet cards. So you're going to remember the red crisis text line 741-741, and you'll recognize the green wallet card, the warning signs of suicide. I've shared a lot of those. You can see some of those. And then we had a group that made the mental health toolkit that had both numbers. So if I showed you my phone case, it's here. These are vinyl, they last forever. I've got new information, Shana. I'm trying to find a new supplier to decrease the total cost of these. But what I did last year for Safety Week is I went out to 11 jobs that were not Lakeside, 1,150 employees, and I passed out these cards. And people would say, what are we doing? It's a toolbox talk. What are we talking about? Suicide prevention. We are? Yeah. And then I proceeded to do a toolbox talk going through each of these. I described why this is a safety issue, why it's a construction issue. You would describe it as a manufacturing issue. This is a high risk in the trades. Here's what we're trying to do. Help people break the stigma so they can get help, hope, and recovery. And that learn card in the middle is where I want to pivot to. Obviously, if this was an in-person training class, we would do more practicing. But I want to just give you a high-level overview. It's look for warning signs. And I'm going to go through each of those here. So that hopelessness, that worthlessness we heard you say, depression, chronic pain, withdrawal, rage, anger, irritability, humiliation, rejection, sleeping too much or too little, feeling that someone is a burden. Frequently, that person is not being selfish, they're being unselfish. They don't want to be a burden to their family. If you hear someone say, you'd be better off without me, it's a real cry for help. Talking about death, giving away possessions, or someone who starts self-harm, maybe building up the courage to try something with more lethal means.
Hey,
So,
Cal, can I break in here for a second? In some of the people in the chat have also indicated that sometimes somebody might show absolutely zero sign, or if you're really paying attention, it's almost like they're the opposite of the hopeless, like they're even more animated or more cheerful a little bit than usual. So
perfect.
That another.
There's no one profile. And so what I was going to say is pretty much right there. The challenge is if someone's already moved too far and they've gotten to that point where they've developed a plan and they're at peace with that plan. So that's why moving this into safety, health, wellness, addressing it sooner, monitoring, how is someone doing? Are they participating? Are they themselves? Are they different? So you have a very insightful group of partners, Shana. That's a really important issue that frequently gets overlooked. But for the majority of people, they'll be showing these signs, and you'll be more astute at recognizing those signs. The empathizing and listening is really trying to engage in a conversation. I see that you've been more withdrawn. I've seen that your behavior is different. You're more animated. Is everything okay? Yeah, I'm fine. I just got a lot going on. Seems like you're experiencing some anxiety. Is there anything you want to share with me? No, I'm good. Everything will be good. I just don't have time. I got to go. Hey, hold on a second. I care about you. You're offering compassion. You're remaining calm, and you're engaging that person in a conversation. More often than not, that person will start with evasive language. And the second, third, fourth, or fifth time, you'll finally break down that barrier and they'll say, nah, you're right. I haven't been myself. Here's why. And so when we can empathize and show compassion, and we can resist that urge to jump in and avoid judgment, people are more apt to share. And so the number one lesson people talk about here is just listen. I don't like to say document, document, document when I teach companies about risk management. I don't like to tell people, listen, listen, listen. But you'll see it here. I did say listen and then listen more. Most people, when they're experiencing that type of despair, they've started to lose hope and they're feeling that helplessness. They feel invisible. They don't feel validated. They don't get the affirmation that they even matter. They've been feeling like a burden. And when they're listened to and you use active language, I'm sorry you're feeling that way. I'm sorry that you're feeling that stress. And if you stress that you're there for them, you're not going to put the idea in their head that will make them think about suicide. You could be the answered prayer that they've been looking for. You could be the light that they've been seeking. You could be a solution to them getting on the path toward help. So I did want to stress that step is so important. And frequently people skip over that. And the listening is so important. The next one in the learn model is asking directly about suicide. And so this is hard. For 10 years, I was trying to lead this as an industry movement, and I was afraid to use the S word at work. I thought I was being effective, meeting people where they needed to be at mental health. And I was putting up barriers. I was reinforcing stigma. And finally, I had a role model, Dr. Sally Spencer Thomas, who said, Cal, it's both mental health and suicide. You need to say both. Okay, I will. And the first day I did, I had an editor agreed to write an article. She turned down 3 times. And now there have been 175 articles in our industry. If you let people know that you're concerned about suicide, it becomes about safety. I have people then asking, how can I help? So you would ask a person, Tom, I notice you've been withdrawn. I've seen that your behavior change. You seem like you're really frustrated lately. And then he would talk and he would say, yeah, but it's okay. Are you sure it's okay? Your behavior really seems to have changed. Yeah, but it's okay. I'm just a burden. I'll get through this. Tom, I care about you. I want to help you. And they might look at you and how are you going to help me? I'm too far gone. Sometimes they won't say it. And then you'll say, Tom, many people who feel depressed get hopeless. They feel like they might kill themselves. Are you thinking about suicide? When you go through mental health first aid, you'll spend 45 minutes practicing this skill. And I want you to try to practice that with a family member. And it's empowering to know that you're reaching someone at that time of need. And then removing dangers. We talked about firearms. We talked about prescription over-the-counter medications. You have to consider every element that could be used if someone says yes. So if I go back to this, if someone says, yeah, actually I am. Thanks for asking. I'm thinking about killing myself. Okay, thank you for sharing. I want to offer you help. I'm here. May we call the Suicide Prevention Lifeline? Would be one example. Or a person could tell you, no, not right now. I wish you'd asked me a year ago. That's when I was really feeling suicidal. If someone says they're suicidal, yes, to this question, are you thinking about suicide? Then you might have to ask them, do you have a plan? And if they say yes, do you have the means? So I want you to know, just asking that question may not be enough. You have to be ready to flex and pivot and to be able to respond. I had one recently where I had to ask that person 5 times and they finally said, yes, I do have a plan. It was going to be today, but I've been talking to you. And I'm like, well, I'm glad that you're talking to me. I am too. Do you have lethal means? Yeah, I have a gun. I've got medication. I've got chemicals. I have a car. I could do carbon monoxide. This was a person that had thought this through. And when I asked at the end of our conversation, are you still considering suicide? Yeah, I can't get the idea out of my head. I'm not going to let you leave until I know that you're okay. And so that one went on for about 30 minutes. And it's stressful, but hold on. You're going to get great training. I just want you to know what Shane is going to bring you is going to be great. And then the last area is referring people, resources, crisis text line, suicide prevention lifeline. Make the call with them. That person who said you did a 3-way call, hats off to you. Not all of us have those technology skills, but that's powerful. There have been a few times where people have made the call. They do want to eventually hear from that person. You might get snapped at. They forget sometimes that you're trying to help, but be patient and then trust. I have a lot of confidence in those call centers. One of the call centers in Oregon handles 98% of those calls with no follow-up referral necessary. So our job is to identify people who need support. We're the first line of support. They call that gatekeeper training. So don't feel like you have to become clinical. Don't feel like your job is to solve people's problems. Our job is to guide them through that crisis, open them to seeking help, and then knowing where to turn. And so that's the power of what we're doing today. So before I go to the next resources, I know that that was like a drive-by. That was a hit and run. What I've been doing in hour and 90-minute webinars is cutting that section out and doing it as a whole separate hour because it's that important. But I wanted to familiarize you. And then Shana would like some feedback. Do you think those wallet cards and stickers would be helpful? And if you would just use the chat function, if you feel like having wallet cards from 751 that would be available for the professional staff to be able to talk to members, let her know yes or no to that response. And I'm going to stop Shana. I'm going to let you and Spencer share that poll on the EAPs. Were you able to get?
I gathered some. I can summarize a few items if you want. Did you want to jump in, Shana?
Well, he assigned me 1 and 2, which I think was the easiest because the answer pretty much said yes to both of those.
Okay. And what I got out of it was that members had used the bulletin board and had used flyers and pamphlets at their desk. One member emphasized that both Boeing and 751 both have EAP programs. And there was a comment in the chat box that the Boeing EAP allows for 6 visits for each issue,
Nice.
whatever that is defined as. So that seemed significant. And someone seemed to think that total utilization was under 20%. And one other thing that has happened in the interim, Cal, is that I have fully figured out how to use the polling. So once you're ready for the final poll,
Good.
I'm able to run that. And I also have an extra poll I'm going to run.
Thank you, Spencer, very much.
And Cal, before you jump into the resources, we had 2 also very compelling questions or comments in the question and answer piece. One of them was for parents of children who are disabled, the stress that takes on parenting. Even raising 3 boys was extremely stressful. So, do you,
Yes.
can you make any recommendations on what resources might be for that? And then also, Travis talked about PTSD and the veteran, perspective as well. And I know that you had some veteran-specific resources.
Yes. So Shana, would it be acceptable for me to send you information and you'll be able to get that to those people?
Absolutely.
So for Travis on the PTSD, Washington Department of Veterans Affairs has great people with a great heart, and there are some really good resources available. When you call that National Suicide Prevention Lifeline, if you press 1, it takes you to the Veterans Crisis Line, and that's answered by veterans who are peer-to-peer offering support. And then I will send Shana information probably by this time tomorrow, Shana,
Okay.
And then on the disabled, is there a caregiving service that can offer respite care? 211 in Washington State and many parts of the country is a good place to find that type of specific info. That's the first time I've been asked that question, but it's really valid. I know many families in that situation, and those that are doing the best have found some type of respite care, frequently through a county health department as a point of access and reference. And sometimes those services are offered at a discounted level or a pay as you can rate. That's how important that is, that many social service agencies will subsidize that. So I think both areas really, really great questions, very, very important. The PTSD is a real area. Think about all the people coming out of military, transitioning into trades, going from a high-risk industry to a high-risk industry. And we haven't built great transitions. So at the national level, I've been a member of the National Action Alliance for Suicide Prevention since 2010, Executive Committee since 2016. It's one of the areas we try to build resources with the veterans and private business. And I do want you to know a special committee was formed just in response to COVID-19. So I'll share information off that that's relevant to get to Shana to continue this dialogue until you can have your mental health first aid class. Did you have any other comments, Shana?
No.
Okay. So I appreciate the information that was shared. Frequently, the EAP uses that term, visit per issue. A majority of EAPs define that term issue very broadly. So maybe you're seeing an EAP for anger management and you finish those 6 visits, but you find the anger comes from my spouse. And then that's an issue. And the anger with my spouse comes from our different spending habits. So that causes financial stress. The EAP that we had at Lakeside that covered our union employees allowed us to teach people that loophole. They cared about people getting help. And as you understand how an EAP works, it's people who just want, their mission is like mine, help people get better. And so learning how that works, make a call to the EAP. Hey, I'm responsible for 200 members of a labor union. I want to know how the EAP works. They'll educate you if they're not busy. And if they are busy and they need you to call back, you'll be respectful, but it's the best way to learn. Does anyone else have questions? I want to be able to answer their questions, Spencer and Shana.
Okay, so the way we've handled that in the past that's worked really well is participants, attendees can raise their hands. This is done remotely and I can allow them to jump in and talk. Also, obviously, the Q&A and chat formats are open and available. Travis is our first person here and I've unmuted you, Travis. Go ahead.
Hello. How's my audio?
Great.
Good.
Okay. I have a powerful story in regards to this, but if I could format it in the way of a conversation with you, Cal, then you can just cut me off whenever you think it's appropriate because it's a little emotionally charged.
Sure.
So I noticed some things that you're doing that I'm going to try to emulate when I talk to people. Things that you probably might not know. You validate everybody. You never invalidate anybody's position. You try to understand them. And you always keep your voice very clear, but you never peak your mic. Very nearly, but never. And you never really judge anybody. And this is the thing. This is the presentation that I want to bring because people that are suicidal feel very judged. And I lost my father, my biological father, to suicide in 2015. But it isn't really sometimes it's learning how to interface with them, but it's also learning how to interface with yourself. in regards to them. Because even when he died, before I grieved, I raged at him
Right.
because I thought that he was weak. And then I started to move to grief, and I was like, how could he do this to me? And then I realized that in this whole process, I was thinking of me and not him.
Yeah, Travis, I mean, first of all, sorry for your loss. And then unbelievable, your comments, like the willingness to share in front of your peers. That is called lived experience. And it's one of the most powerful voices. It helps peers care for others, and it hits people at the heart, and it hits them at the head. It is a powerful tool. And so your willingness to share is powerful. And then thank you in terms of those instincts. I learned that from my mother, who's now deceased.
I'll have some parting words, hopefully to incense some of the people.
Good.
When I went to therapy regarding his death, they told me, do not feel as though it's your fault. You had nothing to do with this. You had nothing. But deep down, I felt like somebody could have done something, and it could have been me. So I really appreciate this class.
Well, thank you very much. And I'm going to, think about you long beyond tonight. I want you to know. And
I appreciate that.
I just appreciate you sharing what you shared. And Shana knows how much I care about people. I'm sitting here with tears in my eyes, hearing your story and just your courage in sharing. And I think you're going to be a powerful voice for 751, helping their members. So
thanks, guys.
Thank you very much, Travis.
And I'd like to build on that a little bit, because Cal does have resources for family members that have gone through something like this. Travis, your ability to become enlightened like that, it took me 35 years to stop being angry at my grandfather after watching what it did to my family. So it took me a very long time to understand it wasn't about
Better
me.
late than never, they say.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Travis, and thank you for
Thank
sharing
you.
that.
Thank you.
And build out those resources, Cal, as well, to make sure you know that there's other help out there too.
And Shane, I was just feeling like we should ask that question. I know we have 2 final polls. Is there anyone else that had a really compelling question or statement, just so we can hear? If not, Shana can send me any questions. I'll provide confidential replies, and then she can communicate back to you. I'm also going to show you my contact information, and you're able to send me a message if you want to communicate that way. So I think I'll move on then, Shana and Spencer. I'm not hearing you guys. We're trying to be respectful of everyone's time. I know this is a long poll, but the 3 of us, Spencer, Shana, and I, talked about this morning. We felt like this would be really important. So after participating in this session, please pick one option, 1 through 4. 1, I understand the importance of talking about these topics, but I'm not ready to talk to anyone yet. 2, I'm more confident identifying risk factors, and I'm prepared to talk to my family and friends about suicide prevention. 3, I feel equipped to share resources with 751 members about suicide. And 4, I will talk to 751 members if the need arises, because everyone has a role to play in suicide prevention. So if you
want to go ahead and drop your screen there, just in case
we don't. Stop sharing. Yeah. Thank you, Spencer.
I'm going to run the poll here. I actually framed it where it is possible to choose more than one answer, because
good.
Although 1 and 2 conflict somewhat, the others are okay. You should be able to vote at this point. And okay, here we go. Here comes the voting. And but it seemed like there were at least a couple where it would be possible to check both.
So if folks could just hang on for a couple minutes, I want to give you my contact info in case there's someone that has a pressing need. And then Spencer has a final poll. So we're going to wait just a couple minutes, probably 30 seconds for this poll. And that's going to help us determine, what additional resources people might need us to share.
The thing I really like about the results coming in here is that only a very small percentage still are not quite ready to discuss yet. The large majority are ready to take some action,
Great.
talking with folks, have some resources available, and recognizing that everyone has a role to play. We have 72% response to the poll, so I'm going to cut this one off.
Wonderful. That's great
And
participation. Thank you, everyone.
And now that I have figured out polling on Zoom, which I'm very excited about, I'm going to launch my own poll. So this is self-explanatory.
And Spencer, when you're done with that, I'll go back to my slides for just a minute and put up my contact info.
Sounds great.
Since I'm going to be sharing those additional resources, I don't think I need to go through those. Shana and Spencer, you'll get the slides by tomorrow, and then you're welcome to share those, and people can see what those last 5 or 6 slides were. So thank you, people, for letting me just go a few minutes over. I apologize, but thanks very much for the interaction. You guys have done great with the polling, with the chats, and I think it helped us be able to tailor some of our comments directly to your needs.
All right, Cal, you're in good shape. You're somewhere between excellent and outstanding.
Well,
and you got no one saying that you're meh.
I was worried about the meh. I've never seen a meh before, so I'm glad someone didn't try to be a prankster there.
Yeah, well, and yeah.
Here's the poll, right? You want to show that? Good.
If you want to. And then the prior poll, I think I can show too, just briefly here.
Do I need to?
I don't think you need to. I don't know. Is that
Good.
showing up?
Yeah, I mean, that's powerful. That is people taking courage. That's people really being empowered to make a difference. That's exciting to me. And I think when we had this conversation this morning, we decided we would do a question like this. So it shows you the expectation is just to care, and 2, to communicate, and 3, to follow through. So what I'd like to do is just share, if you're interested in learning more, there's a mental health assessment at the Center for Workplace Mental Health. There's a case study of how I did it at Lakeside Industries, but down below is that assessment. Very useful. And then I'm just going to go to my contact information. I'll leave it there for just a second. And as we wrap up, Shana has my contact information. Spencer has it. If you have a question that we didn't get to, send it to them. And then I'm happy to provide a response. I'll send information on the PTSD, and I'll see if I can find additional information on that disabled child and the care. Shana, was there anything else that I committed to following up on that I don't remember?
Well, just to let you all know that we did record this, so for those who weren't able to attend, we'll be able to have this be accessed again, and we will be putting all of these resources up on the website. So
good.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much for your help, 751. I want to thank Travis again, and then especially Shana and Spencer. You guys were great hosts, great moderators, and I couldn't have done it without you. So thank you for your time. Thanks for your passion. And I wish you the very best with COVID and the aftermath. I hope things get back to normal soon for all of us.
Well, and a huge thank you to you, Cal, for offering to do this and taking your time to spend with us today. I really appreciate it.
Well, you're totally welcome. You're always going to be one of my favorite people. So thanks a lot, Shana.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thank you again, Spencer.